You ever notice how the truth doesn't knock politely? It kicks the door in smiling. They laughed at you, didn't they? Called you crazy, dramatic, delusional. Said your story was too much. Said you were making it up. And for a while, you almost believed them. But here's the punchline. A high-level player just confirmed your story. Oh, yeah, someone at the top, someone with power. Someone who sees behind the curtain. They looked at the chaos, the whispers, the manipulation, and they said, no, this one's telling the truth. And now, your enemies are panicking. You can feel it, can't you? The sudden silence, the forced smiles, the nervous energy in the room, because the people who tried to bury you just heard something terrifying your name cleared. See, the funny thing about lies is they need maintenance, they need meetings, they need teamwork. But the truth just waits patient, grinning, like me. They thought they were playing chess. They didn't realize you were the board. And now the game flipped. Tonight, we're not just talking about validation. We're talking about exposure. We're talking about what happens when the narrative collapses, when masks crack, when the spotlight turns around. Because when a high-level player confirms your story, it's not just confirmation, it's a warning shot. So sit back, smile a little, and watch closely. Because the people who tried to write your ending are suddenly realizing you're the plot twist. There's something different in the air, isn't there? A shift so subtle most people wouldn't notice it, but you do. Because when truth gets confirmed at the top, it doesn't explode loudly at first. It moves quietly, strategically, like a whisper traveling through corridors of power. Someone with influence, someone who sees what others pretend not to see, looked at the evidence, the patterns, the behavior, and chose clarity over comfort. That's not small. That's seismic. For a long time, your story lived in the shadows. It was dismissed, minimized, twisted. They tried to reduce it to a misunderstanding, tried to frame you as emotional, unstable, dramatic. Because when people can't control the truth, they try to control the narrative, and narratives are easy to manipulate when no one powerful is paying attention. But now, someone powerful is paying attention. When the truth gets confirmed at the top, it changes the entire ecosystem. It means your experience wasn't imagination. It means your instincts weren't paranoia. It means what you felt in your gut had substance. And that confirmation doesn't just validate you. It destabilizes those who relied on your silence. Because lies survive on hierarchy. They survive when the people at the top don't question the story being fed to them. The moment that hierarchy shifts toward truth, the lie loses oxygen. You have to understand what that really means. It means there was a review, a deeper look, a private conversation you weren't invited to. Files opened, behaviors analyzed, reputations weighed. And somewhere in that process, someone with authority said, "There's more here. This person isn't lying." That statement alone carries weight. It travels. It influences decisions you might not even see yet. And the ones who tried to bury your voice, they feel it. They might not show it openly. They might still smile, still act composed. But behind closed doors, there's tension. Because when truth rises upward instead of being crushed downward, it becomes protected. And protection from the top is a different kind of shield. It's not emotional. It's structural. This isn't just about being believed. It's about alignment. When power aligns with truth, outcomes begin to shift. Doors that were closed for mysterious reasons start to loosen. People who avoided eye contact begin acting differently. There's a recalibration happening in spaces you don't even enter. That's what confirmation at the top does. It rearranges power dynamics quietly before the public even notices the rearrangement. And maybe the most powerful part, you didn't have to scream louder. You didn't have to destroy yourself proving it. The truth stood on its own long enough for the right eyes to see it. That's strength. That's resilience. That's patience turning into power. Because once the top knows, the game changes. There's a strange thing about masks. They don't fall off all at once. They crack. Slowly. Under pressure. And pressure is exactly what your enemies are feeling right now. Because when truth rises, performance becomes harder to maintain. The smiles stiffen. The confidence looks rehearsed. The charm starts to glitch. You can almost see it. The split, second hesitation before they speak. The over-explaining. The sudden need to control every conversation. That's not strength. That's fear wearing makeup. For a long time, they relied on perception. Image. Carefully crafted roles. Maybe they played the victim. Maybe they played the leader. Maybe they positioned themselves as untouchable. But masks require consistency, and consistency becomes impossible when the foundation underneath starts shaking. When someone powerful begins questioning the narrative, the illusion weakens. Because now they're not just performing for bystanders. They're under scrutiny, and scrutiny is ruthless. You have to understand how exhausting it is to maintain a false image. Every lie needs backup. Every manipulation needs reinforcement. Every twisted story needs witnesses who agree to keep quiet. But when the spotlight turns toward them instead of you, they don't control the angles anymore. The cracks become visible. Contradictions surface. Their confidence, once loud and dominating, turns defensive and sharp. Watch closely. You'll notice the difference between authority and desperation. The mask cracking doesn't mean public exposure has already happened. It means the internal panic has begun. Because they know something you don't need to say out loud. The narrative is slipping. They can't control who believes what anymore. They can't silence you the way they used to. The power they thought was permanent suddenly feels temporary. And here's the most fascinating part. The more they try to hold the mask together, the more obvious the cracks become. Overreactions, subtle smear attempts, sudden kindness that feels strategic instead of sincere. When people feel exposed, they either attack harder or retreat quietly. Either way, it reveals instability. And instability is dangerous for someone whose entire identity was built on appearing solid. The mask cracking is psychological before it's public. It's the sleepless nights, the replaying of conversations, the wondering who knows what. It's that uncomfortable awareness that truth has allies now. And when truth has allies, manipulation loses leverage. You don't need to rip the mask off. Time and pressure are already doing that work. The energy in the room shifts because people sense authenticity rising and performance fading. Even those who once sided against you begin to feel uncertainty. Doubt creeps in. And doubt is the enemy of deception. They thought the mask was permanent. They thought they could wear it forever without consequence. But power aligned with truth changes everything. And once cracks form, they never fully disappear. Panic doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like overconfidence, forced laughter, sudden bold moves that don't make sense. Because when power shifts, the ones who were comfortable at the top feel the ground move beneath them. And that sensation is terrifying. They built their certainty on the belief that nothing would challenge them, that no one would question them, that the structure would always protect them. But structures change when truth climbs higher than lies. You can sense it. The atmosphere feels charged. Conversations become shorter. Messages go unanswered. Meetings happen without you, but somehow about you. That's not coincidence. That's strategy scrambling to adjust. Because when someone at a higher level starts seeing through the illusion, the entire chain below begins to vibrate. And vibration creates instability. They used to feel untouchable. That's the key. When someone feels untouchable, they act carelessly. They overplay their hand. They underestimate the quiet strength of patience. But the moment they realize someone more powerful is watching, truly watching, the confidence fractures, and panic begins its silent spiral. Panic is messy behind closed doors. It's whispered calls. It's contingency plans. It's trying to align stories so they don't contradict each other. It's revisiting old decisions and wondering which one will surface first. When power shifts, the ones who relied on dominance suddenly rely on damage control. And damage control is reactive, not strategic. You don't panic when you're secure. You don't panic when your foundation is solid. Panic only shows up when there's something to lose. Reputation, position, influence, control. And control is the real addiction. The moment they feel it slipping, even slightly, their behavior changes. Watch for urgency where there used to be calm. Watch for aggression where there used to be arrogance. That's fear trying to reassert authority. What makes this shift so powerful is that you didn't have to force it. You didn't have to storm the gates. The shift happened because truth climbed. And when truth climbs high enough, it alters the flow of influence. Decisions that once went automatically in their favor now get reconsidered. Opinions that once aligned blindly now get reevaluated. That reevaluation is enough to spark panic, because they know something critical. Power is perception. If perception changes at the top, it trickles downward. Allies start hesitating. Supporters start distancing. Neutral observers start asking questions. And questions are dangerous when your story depends on silence. Panic also makes people expose themselves. They rush moves. They send messages they shouldn't. They reveal motives in frustration. Under pressure, character shows. And the higher the pressure, the clearer the exposure. This isn't loud chaos. It's controlled fear. It's the subtle unraveling that happens when someone realizes the throne isn't as stable as it felt yesterday. And once panic enters the equation, dominance is never the same again. Silence used to feel heavy, didn't it? Like it was working against you. Like every quiet room was proof that their version of the story had won. No one defending you. No one correcting them. Just that suffocating stillness that made you question everything. But silence changes its meaning when truth rises. What once felt like abandonment starts feeling strategic. What once felt like isolation begins to look like observation. Because when silence follows exposure, it's rarely accidental. Pay attention to the difference. Before, their voices were loud, confident, certain. They repeated their narrative with boldness because they believed it would never be challenged. But now there's a pause, a hesitation. Conversations that once flowed easily suddenly feel cautious. That's not coincidence. That's recalculation. When people realize they might be wrong, or worse, exposed, they speak less. They choose their words carefully. They retreat into controlled quiet. And that kind of silence speaks volumes. You don't hear the accusations the way you used to. You don't see the bold dismissals. Instead, there's distance. Watching, waiting. That shift alone tells you something is different. Silence can be a shield, but it can also be a signal. A signal that something is being processed behind the scenes. That someone is reviewing facts. That decisions are being weighed carefully. The loudest lie often collapses into the quietest room. Silence also reveals confidence. Real confidence doesn't need constant defense. It doesn't need to repeat itself to stay alive. The truth, once acknowledged at a higher level, doesn't shout. It stabilizes. It settles into place. And when it does, the chaos around it quiets down. Because there's nothing left to argue. If the foundation has shifted, you might notice people avoiding direct confrontation. Avoiding eye contact. Avoiding the topic entirely. That avoidance is communication. It says, we're aware. It says, We're not as certain as we were. It says, something has changed. Silence becomes the loudest admission, without a single word being spoken. Even your own silence has power now. You're not scrambling to prove yourself anymore. You're not over-explaining. You're not chasing validation. That calm restraint sends a message stronger than defense ever could. It shows that you don't need to fight every battle publicly, because the real conversations are happening elsewhere. There's also a different kind of silence, the kind that falls over a room when someone important knows the truth. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it shifts the tone. People measure their reactions more carefully. They test the atmosphere before speaking. That measured behavior is respect mixed with uncertainty. Silence isn't emptiness. It's information. And when everything suddenly goes quiet after chaos, it usually means something significant has already been decided where it truly matters. They thought you were a side character. That's the funny part. A temporary obstacle. A background voice they could edit out of the script whenever it became inconvenient. They wrote scenes without you, held meetings about you, designed outcomes that didn't include your survival, let alone your rise. In their version of the story, you were supposed to fade quietly, misunderstood, dismissed, forgotten. But plot twists don't announce themselves. They build slowly, quietly, beneath the surface of assumptions. While everyone is focused on the obvious villain or the loudest hero, the real shift is forming in the margins. And that's where you were. Watching. Learning. Enduring. Growing stronger in silence while they mistook your patience for weakness. Being the plot twist means you don't follow the expected pattern. They predicted your reaction. They expected you to explode, to beg, to collapse under pressure. They thought they understood your breaking point. What they didn't understand was your restraint, your timing, your ability to absorb impact without losing direction. A plot twist changes the entire meaning of what came before it. Think about that. Every whisper, every accusation, every calculated move against you now looks different under new light. The same events they used to frame as your failure are being reinterpreted as evidence of their manipulation. The same silence they mocked is now seen as composure. The same patience they underestimated is now recognized as strength. And that realization unsettles people. Because when you become the plot twist, control shifts. The narrative they carefully constructed begins to serve you instead of them. All the energy they invested in undermining you becomes part of the story that proves your resilience. It's almost poetic. The very traps they set now highlight your endurance. What makes a plot twist powerful isn't noise. It's inevitability. It's that moment when everyone suddenly connects the dots and realizes the signs were always there. The overlooked details, the quiet integrity, the consistency in your character. They were too busy trying to manage perception to notice you were building credibility. You didn't need to manipulate. You didn't need to perform. You simply stayed aligned with truth long enough for it to circle back. And when it did, everything shifted. Now they have to re-evaluate you. Not as a threat they can easily dismiss, but as a force they miscalculated. That miscalculation costs them confidence. It costs them authority. Because underestimating someone who turns out to be central to the outcome is a strategic failure. You were never the extra in someone else's story. You were the turning point they didn't see coming.